Okay, while we're waiting, how are things in Minnesota weather-wise? It's very rainy here. I'm missing a little bit of snow.
It is sleeting at the moment. We had rain for the last day, I guess. Uh, Unseasonably warm, which was good because it melted all the ice dams that formed from the last snowstorm. So now it's freezing. It's going to freeze again, and we should have nice, slick roads. So typical Minnesota weather.
Yeah, I was about to say, but you guys, is it usually this time of year though? Do you have like a lot more snowpack, or is it just like a combo? Because like usually for us, come January, it's just a deep freeze,
Where are
versus
you?
usually in December. Washington State.
Oh, yeah. We're in Washington State.
I'm on the east side of the state, so
Okay,
I'm not
so
on the coast.
you don't get as much rain,
No,
right? Yeah.
no, not normally, but we have this atmospheric river, which you've probably seen the videos of all the flooding. That's on the other side of the state,
Right.
but that's what's but it's causing us to just have constant rain every single day, like
Yeah,
every
I
day.
lived out in uh, Bainbridge, so like right across the sound from Seattle for
Yeah.
about a year. And it was like, I don't know how you guys live. I know you don't, you're not in that rain shadow, but oh God, I couldn't handle that much rain. It was too much. This is normal. We're having a pretty normal winter right now. So we got dumped on like right after Thanksgiving, which is usually when we get snow. And then it will usually stay until March or April, actually April. Um, we've had some kind of weird patterns where we've had a couple winters recently where we didn't have snow, like Christmases without snow, which are okay, but kind of depressing. Um, but other than that, yeah, this is pretty normal. January is usually our coldest month. Like it's below zero usually for probably 10 days.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. We usually have lots of fashionably late uh, people showing up to Red Tent Storyteller because they're just going to join us in a conversation. If you're in this space, please repost the space so that we can continue with the Red Tent's mission, which is to empower and uplift any woman out there who wants to be so. Okay, so as you know, my name is Peter Blackbird. I am the host of the Red Tent Storyteller Hour. Today, we are joined by author Jennifer Brown, who has quite a history of writing behind her already. And I wanted, before we get to your book, which had me hoot, I was laughing. I just love, I am this, in the, I am not someone who can read something that's dry. I don't have the capability, my brain just doesn't, but if it makes me laugh, I'll keep up with it. So I really appreciate that. Let's talk about Jennifer. When did you decide that you wanted to get into writing? When did that little eureka moment for happen for you in your life?
Third grade. I just finished reading well, I just started reading the Little House books and I thought this is what I want to do. And I actually sat down at the little, those old kidney shaped tables in school, where the teacher would sit in the middle and then all the kids would be on the other side of it. Um, I sat down alone in the little alcove that we had my little notebook and I'm writing down stuff and I'm like, I have absolutely no stories to tell. And I close the book and I'm like, well, I just gotta wait. And so I kept reading, but I also kept a journal. That was one of the things my school was very big on, is that they gave us this blank journal and we had to write like I think a page a day or something. And it was where I ended up putting all these, whatever was going on in the day. Most of it is unusable. It was usually about, one boy, but it got me in the practice of writing every day. So that's where that started. And then, of course, life took over and I ended up having all these kinds of weird, funky stories. And that's what I've been putting out ever since. So now I'm finally, so I'd written another book prior to this. It has not been published. It won't be published, and I can't even talk about it on social media at all. But it is being reworked into a new piece. So that will be coming probably later next year.
I totally get that. Like, I have art that no one will ever see because it was art that I did for my own journey, right? And I know that there's still a lot of oh, your healing journey, but it actually is. It's not like anyone decides to deal with the crap from their childhoods and younger years and then they just go, okay, I'm dealing with it, and they're done. It's not microwave popcorn, right? So for you, you said third grade you started writing in the Little House books. I think that this is something too that like younger generations are missing out. I think Little House books should be introduced especially to young girls, because here's this story where the majority of the family are female and they're making it in the wilderness and how they survive. And it just really, you don't think about it. For me, I didn't think about it when I was a kid, that Laura Ingalls Wilder is one of the first women heroes I had. What was it like for you, like when you read those books, and you what was your reaction, what was to the Little House series?
I read them, what, 1972 or three is probably when I started reading them. And I think the show came out not too long after that. Like the show kind of came out when I was reading them. And so that made it even like we lived Little House on the Prairie. That was just what my generation did. Um, if we weren't playing Charlie's Angels, we were playing Little House on the Prairie, which is quite a juxtaposition if you think about it, but really not all that odd. Um, but yes, I when I finished the series, the last of the books in the little series that there was, I remember crying and thinking, "Oh, this is so sad. I'm done," And then it dawned on me, I can read it again. And I did. I probably read the books 4 or 5 times, and there's only a handful of books I've read multiple times. I could probably count them all on one hand. So that goes a lot. Not only that I think it was the right time, because I think the story started at about the same age I was when I started reading them. Um, and it's a very small part of her life. They end when she's what, in her early 20s, I think. Maybe a little bit older. So a lot was packed into that those books. And what's more fascinating now is reading, really what was going on behind the scenes. She really made she really, kind of brightened up the stories. They were much darker than what really happened. Apparently, they moved around because her father had, he had debt, and he was oftentimes leaving in the middle of the night. And, it really was a story of survival. Not that he was like, any sort of criminal, but he just would lose everything, and they had to go. So it was a story of scrappiness and uh, being able to, you know, press on when life hands you a bunch of lemons. And that was helpful for me. I had a lot of lemons in my life, as I know you did too. So you have to just she was very motivating in that regard. That's why I love the books, I think, the most, is that they did survive
I can
and
totally
thrive.
see the scrappy. I can just, like, when you said that, you flashed into my head there for a second, because that's kind of how I see your persona on on X, and in general. You aren't sitting around waiting for people to make things happen for you. You're out there trying to make things happen with whatever you're going to make that lemonade, the best possible lemonade that Jennifer can make out of it. And if it's not good enough for someone, that's their problem, not yours. And I think that's really interesting. So what did you graduate to after that series? So you were writing at the did you continue writing like through school?
I journaled throughout all that time. I never, it's funny, I never took a class aside from required courses on, creative writing, that sort of thing. It never occurred to me that this was something I could do, which is bizarre if you think about it. I also, other formidable authors to me were Irma Bombeck, and Dave Barry was huge. Joe Souchere, who's a local columnist here, he does Garage Logic, that's on X if you are looking for him. But he's very local, very political, or not very political, but it's actually very it's a guy's sort of thing. But he wrote a column twice a week in our newspaper that I just loved because it was no holds barred. This is reality. This is what's happening. And he didn't care what other people thought, which was a hard, we're living in a different world now than we were 40, 50 years ago, where you could say a lot more then than you can now. So I really appreciated that about it. And Dave Barry was just always just funny, like pee in your pants kind of funny. Is so that was sort of I wanted to the problem I have with a lot of my stories, like right now I'm working on a book called Bad Dates, and it's about I talk about dating on X a lot, and they're really popular posts for some reason. But the problem is that the stories always go really dark because it's a very dark and not dark, I guess isn't quite, but it's a depressing sort of situation, especially for older people. We have a loneliness epidemic that's going to come crashing down on us soon. And it's because people don't know how to connect anymore. And we don't even have those situations in place. So that tends to be the problem. I infuse humor into it because it gets too dark. And so, and I think that's pretty common with humor, right? Stand-up comedians, they
Yeah.
have dark pasts, and that's why. So that's why they do humor.
First, I just want to say Irma Bombeck. I just got thrown back, and I go, "That's why so many of us are smart asses, right?" I mean, from that
Yeah.
generation. I mean, it's like I just connected the dots on that, and it's really fascinating that you're talking about. I think the reason posts like that or blogs like that get more engagement is because everything is so polished and manufactured and plastic that I think people are searching for. This is me unfiltered and raw, and this is the truth, right? Because we everything these days is packaged and sent out there in this like completely there's no heart and soul to it. And I think it's really important, and I'm glad you brought that up about the loneliness epidemic. And we're talking about, like, if it's older people, there was a time that they could have retain those skills. But then we went in this 3-year lockdown, right? That completely, for some reason, especially here in the, we have social etiquette amnesia is the only way I can put it. And I think that's, but maybe that's, I've found that when I'm just like, this is what it was like for me, people communicate with me in those posts more so than anything because they want to talk about this is reality. And you seem to, you don't, even though you're making them funny, you're not sugarcoating the situation.
No, I'm pointing out the absurd in most of these situations, and it just happens to be funny. And some people don't find it funny, right? I mean, I think you have to have a certain sense of humor and I have the sense of humor of a 12-year-old boy. So, but I think anybody who's kind of led a bit of a challenging life, and I think that we on X tend to have a lot more of that, right? I don't fit well on Instagram. I can't polish it all up. I don't want to. Same with TikTok. It's not a format for me, but for on X, it works really well because I think most people are pretty authentic out here. You're not seeing a lot of the polished, uh, lifestyle or Facebook posts that you see on other platforms. So it's much easier to point out the absurd, but also laugh about it. And not laughing like at somebody, but laughing with somebody. Because it is funny.
Oh, absolutely. And the reason, especially like it, people, women who are involved on any level in this movement, I've never met more, I mean, like, women, in my opinion, have really dark senses of humor, and in general we don't, we get when someone's saying something and realize, and that we're like, okay, this was terrible, but it was hilarious at the same time. I think, and we love stuff like that. I think that's the one thing I've noticed across in my time on social media, because I wasn't really on social media before 2020. That like, I'm going, oh, there's so many women who find the same things funny as me, right? And it's like cool. So I really, really love that. I would like to, we're going to fast forward for a moment and then we'll come back. I want to talk about ginger snapped, hot flashes, and hot takes. And if you don't mind, I would like either yourself or myself to read a little bit of chapter 17. You can't please everyone, because this one really stuck with me.
Well, by all means, go ahead and read it.
Okay. So this, once again, this is from Jennifer's book, Ginger Snapped, Hot Flashes and Hot Takes. Chapter 17. You can't please everyone. Have you noticed that whenever someone makes a bold statement these days, they immediately water it down so no one gets offended? I really hate lutefisk. But did I pronounce lut? I should have had you read
Lutefisk.
lutefisk. But it's okay if you love lutefisk. Please don't block or dox me for my radical opinion about fish that's been preserved in lye and tastes like petroleum jelly. You can't please everyone, and you shouldn't try. It's a fool's game, a wild goose chase, pure folly. I learned that lesson early. I was canceled in 8th grade, long before it became a hashtag. To this day, I don't know what I did to make my little clique of friends turn on me, but they were swift and unforgiving. I'm sure I said something awkward. Most of what came out of my mouth in 8th grade was painfully awkward. At the time, I was hyper aware of my weight and terrified someone might find out my dad was gay, something I barely understood myself, especially since he was married to my mom. Navigating the teenage girl social hierarchy was never in the cards for me. I found out I'd been canceled the day I sat down at my usual spot at the lunch table. No one looked at me. No one spoke to me. I don't know who led the charge, but my best guess was the two girls constantly jockeying for queen bee status. They had held some kind of meeting. Whatever the reason, wearing the wrong sweater, refusing to smear butter all over the cafeteria bathroom mirrors, or failing to back one of them up, I was voted off the lunch table. Now, I'm not going to read any more because it's just a really great chapter. I want go purchase Jennifer's book because it's really amazing. And this is kind of how I approach life now, right? I can't please everyone. And I think that's, we are, as a sex class, we tend to try and be people pleasers. When for you did you go, okay, I'm not doing this anymore in your life, not just on X, but like I'm gonna do what's best for Jennifer, not water down Jennifer to make other people happy.
I think it came in phases, right? It's like peaking. You peak multiple times, right? Um, and we've talked about that just normally, but that moment in 8th grade was one of them where it's like, because I had no idea what I had done and nobody was going to tell me. And they all pretended like it never happened. And this was normal. That's normal girl behavior. And at that moment, I realized it didn't matter what I did because they had decided randomly that it was not acceptable. But as a female, and especially, coming of age and all that sort of thing, and then, entering your 20s when you're trying to attract a mate and do all the right things, get a good job, you have to people please. So it has come to me like after my first divorce, that was another moment where I kind of like, okay, this isn't working for me. Um, especially during the divorce. And so it was multiple layers of realizing that and I think most women experience this. So, and then you hit a certain age and your hormones drop and you're just like, fuck it. There's, why am I wasting my time with this whole thing? So I don't think, at least for me, it wasn't just once, it was multiple situations where I had to learn over and over and over again that it doesn't matter what other people think of me. We know that in theory, right? We all know this. but it takes a lot to really have it sink in because the social cost is pretty high, right? To be canceled, and canceled is not the right word necessarily, but to be shunned or outed from your group is that's a high cost. So we do get along, and but at some point you realize it's not worth the cost, right? It's not worth your own integrity anymore.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us that I understand why history never taught women why they once we hit a certain age they just put us out to pasture or made us look like Auntie Em on the porch and Wizard of Oz if we were in our 40s. I think part of the reason they didn't tell us is because I think there's such power now in women over 40 in the sense of what we've gone through in life or what our bodies are going through currently and all this stuff. So I think this is kind of I think it's an awakening of the middle-aged woman, honestly, from because if you think back even on sitcoms 20 years ago, they were making someone in their 40s look like Sophia from the Golden Girls, right? And that's really not the case anymore.
Yeah. The thing about Sophia, and that's an interesting uh the show itself, because weren't they all like in their 40s or something? Weren't they all really young?
Yes, I try not to think about that when I found
I
that out.
know,
That was a
right?
dark day.
But they made her look older, obviously, for you know, because she was Dorothy's grandmother or mother. But if you look at like I look at pictures of my grandmother and she was a striking woman, but she looked old to me because she was my grandma, right? So she had cat glasses, and at the time they were very fashionable, but they look old to me because they weren't fashionable in my period. So a lot of that, and I think there's even a video that goes around that kind of updates everybody based on the fashion trends of the current, like they put the Golden Girls with longer hair and more current fashions, and they look normal. They look like normal women our age. So I think a lot of that is certainly how we view it, how it was shown back then. But at the same time, Dorothy didn't care either, or not Dorothy. Well, none of them did, but Sophia didn't. She was not necessarily a people pleaser ever. I don't think her character certainly never came off that way. So I think there are some people who don't have that, but I also think that that comes of, again, you probably just have to get shit done. Like I tend to be a little short um, in communicating, especially with clients, and it's not a good thing. It's not a healthy trait by any means. But my mother needed she had so many disabilities that it was I had to be very direct with her, and we had to get things. She had no short-term memory, so things would get forgotten very quickly. And so it was a matter of being very concise and direct with her. And unfortunately, it worked for her, but it doesn't work in having a negotiable type of communication with somebody who might be signing a check for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this is when I tell you that if I was, you always see this, which Golden Girl are you? I'm totally Rose. But I feel like I shouldn't say that to someone from Minnesota right now. But
Why not?
who would you identify with?
Oh God, I love to say that I'm Blanche, but I know it's more Dorothy. Um, but I can be Rose too, like we can all I think that's the great thing about those characters is that we all have a little bit of each of them in us. And as women, you kind of have to play that game. What do they call that? Oh gosh, I can't think of the word, but where you swap roles, you use different dialects in different places because that's who your audience is. So I think we all do that. I think women do that more so than men. But we all have a little bit of all of those characters in us because it benefits us, right? I can be Rose frequently, especially on my next door. I will be obtuse on purpose because it's less confrontational. And in Minnesota, of course, everything is confrontational politically. And so it's helpful. And it's also helpful to be somebody like Blanche, where you can be a little flirty and all of that. But then you need to be the Dorothy and just get shit done, right? Like just cut through the crap. So I think we all can be all of them. And I think most of us are.
I think you're absolutely right. We're going to go back now a little bit. Let's go back to Jennifer Brown in her 20s and 30s. 20s were in the 80s, right? Am I get is that correct? You were in your 20s or
Teens and 20s. So I
teens and
graduated in
20s?
84. So yeah,
Okay.
I
All right.
teens
Yeah.
and
So
20s.
I'm super jealous that you graduated in 84. I didn't graduate till 91. I did get to do a little of I had the grunge movement as well as the 80s, but I love the 80s more than anything. What tell us about Jennifer when cuz you got married. Um what when you said things kind of like you were journaling and then you got married and everything. Um what were you journaling this whole time when you were living life? What point did you go, okay, now I want to set up a website? And your website is lovely. I love the main picture. I would want to sit out on that patio for or that lake deck forever. Um, did you always, because life gets you busy, you're taking care of your mom, you have your own life, were you still finding times to journal or keep up that outlet for yourself during that time?
Yeah, I kept a journal until I started blogging, really. And I think I started the blog in 2007. Prior to that, I owned a bookstore back in the 90s, and I hired a kid from one of the colleges here to build a website for me. And I was kind of watching him do it, and I thought, well, that's something that's cool. I could do that. And he taught me how. I paid him to teach me how to do it. And then kind of like the movie with Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks, all Borders moved in on one side and Barnes and Noble on the other, and then Amazon opened shop, and I was out of business. So that's when I moved to Seattle and started working in the tech firm, and then came back because it just rained way, way, way too much over there, and started doing I do social media. I don't do it so much anymore for other clients, but I started doing social media and blogging for other companies and web design. So that's where I did that. And then, of course, I started my blog, Redhead Ranting, back in, I want to say 2007. And then that's where that kind of became my journal. And so I haven't written on paper since then. But prior to that, I probably have 40, 50 notebooks filled with just thoughts. And I tended to write or journal, and this is not like, this was just like getting my thoughts out at the end of the day. Like it was a way to decompress. And my marriages were not situations where there was that kind of decompressing. So most of what I was writing about was just, what assholes my ex-husbands were, which is, it was not, it was very childish and very immature, so to speak. Like if I had any self-awareness at the time, I might have, uh, done more about, hey, what about this? What about me is contributing to this? But it was literally just like vomiting onto the page. And so at some point I should probably burn all of those, but I haven't yet.
So I was about to ask you, do you ever go back and like how far back do you go in your journals to look and see what do you visit like the ones from when you were in elementary
I
school
do,
or
yes, only because that's a story I'm working on, is what was going on then. And those are less venting at, well, there's a lot of that too, but there was some guidance there just from the teachers. Like again, that was a class that we, or not a class, but we had assignments, write about this, and it was very broad, but there was some, talk about current events, or talk about whatever was going on, politically or whatever. So there was it's the nice thing about those journals is that it's kind of glimpse into the 70s and 80s, mostly the 70s, which is what I'm working on for another project. But so it's fun because I talk a lot. I remember writing, we used to like, if you remember the American Top 40. So we used to listen to that every Sunday night, and I would write down the songs as they played them. We didn't have streaming, you just had to listen to it live. And it was a big deal, especially on New Year's Eve. They would play the top 100 songs of the year. And you didn't know, you kind of you could guess what was popular based on what they played all the time. But, you know, that was the whole point of listening. And I remember writing in my journal as this was going on, and I'm talking about the music of the 70s. And, it was disco and all of that. And looking back, and especially what I listened to, I wrote something like, it was a great decade for music. And then, of course, the 80s happened, which was a better decade as far as I'm concerned, for probably other reasons. But now I don't listen to anything past the 90s because it's part of probably my age, right? But I just think most of the contemporary music is kind of crappy. And again, that's me. But I have a big appreciation for the music of the 70s now, especially because, there were singing like nuns, and there was a lot of singing about Jesus, and there was a big revival going on back then. But you couldn't put that stuff out there now, and I'm not like suggesting we do that, but there's the what you can sing about or what you can write about has become so myopic that I don't know if we'll ever get that time back again. But the 70s was like, you had some of the just this huge broad categories of what was fun to listen to.
When do you think this frog in slow boiling water, the whole censoring of the arts in the form of what you can sing, what you can write, what you can paint, in your opinion, when do you think that started?
I think it started in the 80s, maybe even the 70s. Um, we didn't notice it. Certainly, I don't know. It maybe even longer than that if you want to.
Do you think the adding of do you I know you probably remember this, the Tipper Gore
Oh,
and the
yeah.
explicit lyrics? I feel like to me that was kind of a moment uh where, because I lived in a town in Georgia that successfully the Beastie Boys were supposed to come play, and enough people got together and said, "Well, they have explicit lyrics on their album." For me, I feel like looking back, I didn't know it at the time, but I think that was kind of the start of it for me.
Yeah, but I think that there was, I was listening to um Delta Dawn. Do you remember that song by what's her face? Helen Reddy?
Yes.
That hits differently now. And, at the time it was always a very sad song, kind of like the Copacabana and all of that sort of thing. But because it's a song about a woman who either fell in love and the guy didn't like show up, and she was just sort of left, sort of, what was that? Miss Havisham.
Oh yeah, from Great Expectations.
Was it Great Expectation? Is that who I'm thinking of, or am I thinking of
Yeah, Miss Haversham. I
okay.
know this because my sister often says, "Are you wandering your house like Miss Haversham again?"
Okay.
So I know this
So
one.
it's the woman who not scorned, but who thought she had this person, and then they basically ghosted her, and she kind of never got over it, right? And that's the same with the Copacabana. It's similar, except I guess Tony died. Can't believe all this is coming up in my head.
We're going so dark
Right?
in this.
But there was that, because Helen Reddy, she sang I Am Woman. She was like that was the anthem of feminists, right? And we didn't need men and all of that sort of thing. And then you have Delta Dawn, where it's like, so she didn't have a man and her life still didn't turn out well at all, right? So I think that a lot of that was in play back then. The whole, this demonizing men and everything that has happened in that regard was put into place back then. So I don't know when this stuff started, and I don't there's theories that it was, in place decades before that in the colleges, and then it finally trickled down. I never really paid much attention to that. And it's probably only been in the last 5, 6 years where I paid any attention to this sort of sociological aspect of things. So I would say it was probably going on before Tipper Gore started slapping labels on there. But at the same time, like, we don't do that, right? The
Yeah, I don't
some
think
of the
those labels
music,
matter anymore, right? Because kids can just download stuff on their phone.
I don't even think they have them, but I mean, the the content that you listen to, some of these songs by, I can't even think of, like, Cardi B, or what's the um
That
Doja
Sabrina
Cat.
Carpenter girl whose album covers are just like, I can't count on my talent for singing, so I'm gonna make my album cover look like I'm in the middle of a polycule. Yeah, kind of
Well,
deal.
I mean, we had Madonna did that sort of thing too.
Very
So,
true.
I don't have a problem. I mean, sex sells, right? We know that. But in the 70s, the music was all very innuendo. And like, there was somebody posted, what were the songs about sex that you didn't know were about sex, right? So, like, Slow Ride was about sex, or Pearl Necklace. Well, everybody knew that song was about sex. But there were all these songs, and I listened to these songs when I was that age, and it's like, oh God, I didn't know that was about sex, because it wasn't overt. And now it's just in your face, and it's unlistenable because of that. And so I think the shock value, it does sell to some degree, but I also think it gets overused. And, it's that pendulum is going to swing back, probably, hopefully. So we're not talking about WAPs anymore.
Yeah, I mean, because you said that, I think back to when, like, in the late 80s, early 90s, we had the explosion of sex positivity, right? And being open. So it's interesting to think about the songs from the 70s where it was overt and they didn't really come out and say it. We were openly talking about it, right? It became it was almost like it was a different sexual revolution than the 60s, but it was still there. I wanted to ask you, if you could describe in one word how you feel your writing changed from the let's go first with when you were first writing as a kid to your 20s, and then how it's changed since then to now.
In one word, I can't do that.
Okay, you can
Um,
have two. No, I'm just kidding. In your own words, how about that?
my writing really hasn't changed. It's My grammar's gotten better. I've paid more attention to timing and structure, and that sort of thing. And that's just something that comes, the more you do it, the better it gets. It's, because it was, when I first started writing, it was just, and I still do it, long run on sentences. Commas get thrown wherever I feel like it. Spelling is usually, I'm pretty good at that. But I write the way I talk. So lately I've been, I'm editing my current book, and I've been trying to use AI to help me do that. And it inevitably makes it worse. So it doesn't sound like me, and I hate it. So I end up scrapping all of that and just putting it out the way it is, because that's how I want it to sound, even though it's not what AI, it's not what's out there, right? Because AI is taking all of that snappy um, content that's been on blogs for, mid 2000s, right? When everybody had a blog, and it kind of compressed it all into that. And it's like, that's not me at all, but that's what's out there. So that's what AI pushes back at me. And I don't want to sound like that. I would rather sound like myself than somebody else.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to spot because, especially if you are writing from the heart, that's not like the things that happen to you in your life that shape you can't be duplicated because it reads something, right? Because it's all based off of emotion. Let's talk about your presence on X. I think I've been following you for a few years now, and you have been steadily growing in your reach. I know I have been part of, I see you trying to organize women to, let's not be toxic. Let's not be jealous of it. Let's support each other. Tell When you started off on X, did you think that you would be at the point where you have 40,000 followers or more than 40,000?
Um, you know, I was on X. I started X or Twitter when I started all my social media platforms. So, when I started blogging, but I didn't do anything with it. But I did grow it. I think I had like maybe 25,000 followers back in 2010 or something. And then I abandoned it and lost them all. And most of them were probably bots or, that sort of thing. So when I came back in what, 2020, I want to say, maybe 2021, I had like 7,000 followers. But getting involved with the turfs, obviously, then you meet everybody that way. I think that's how you and I discovered each other. And then politics, set in. So, um, we kind of found that bubble. I've had people who have shared, my posts that, went big, and that's generally where I get a lot of followers. I don't go after them as much as I used to. Like I used to follow everybody and hope that they follow me back and that sort of thing. I don't really pay attention a whole lot to it anymore. I don't clean it up either, unfortunately. So like my ratio is probably not good because I haven't culled it like most people have. I just don't care that much. I mean, I do care, but I don't. It's one more task that I just don't bother with. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So do you feel though, like, and one of the things that I absolutely love about being part of this community of women is that, like, the only thing I knew about female socialization really was when I spent time with my sisters in the summer or what I saw in sitcoms, right? Or TV or whatever. And it was not the case. And I also think that it's been like, I hate politics. I feel like I lost a bet in a previous life or something. The amount of politics I have to know now, because I used to run from these conversations. It was like paint on the wall to me, talking politics. And now I have to know it, right? Because I need to know what's up. I need to know what kind of nonsense they're planning on doing. Like, and I feel bad about that now because, like, I know in Minnesota, we've got the example of men and women's prisons, right? At Shapaki. And I know I'm probably pronouncing that wrong.
Shakopee.
Uh, Thank you. And it's like, I think to myself, well, I know there's men in women's prisons here. And I wouldn't have ever, if this whole gender row came up, right? If it hadn't gone into a social contagion and spread all over the place, I probably, it would have been something that they could have just swept under and I would have never known it was occurring because my news isn't reporting on it. They're never going to talk about it. They would have just reported two females got into a fight in the women's prison, right?
Right.
So, but it's really opened me up to the fact that there's a lot of women out there that know, that are talking across aisle. We have women that have realized, hey, maybe what we were told all our lives about the opposite side isn't necessarily true. And I think that goes both ways for conservatives and liberals. And I'm just wondering what has been the most surprising thing, because you said you've gotten more active in the past 6 years, and then yes, you and I met via turfing and stuff. What has been the most surprising thing that you've come away with as you've met women from all over the world?
That they are no different than, sorry, there goes my dog. They're no different than those girls at the eighth grade cafeteria. We still have all the drama. We still have the purity tests and the if you don't say this, and it doesn't matter what group you're in, it's everywhere. So again, it's sort of that coming to this realization that I can't control everybody or anybody for that matter. And if they don't like me, there's not much I can do about that, because I mean, I've had people unfollow me or block me who we're all in the same boat, right? We all have the same beliefs or everything, but I said something wrong and they, blocked me. It's like, okay, well, that's just how it goes. So, people are people. And I have stepped back from the politics, and I have stepped back a little from turfing per se, only because I think that it's a little bit myopic, and it's also not, that's not what I want to talk about all day long. And I think that we do ourselves to, not just on any of these things that are, you know, top of mind, that by sharing them over and over again, we just make more of them. So I am trying to share more positive stuff because that's what I want to see. And I don't think that continuing to share, Reddit posts from 5 years ago, I don't think there's any benefit to that, where you've got two dudes pretending to be women talking about their experience. Because one, it's from 5 years ago, but it's also, there's a fair amount of voyager or voyeuristic aspect to it. And, you know, so I've stepped away from that. I think that, and most, maybe a lot of people won't agree with me, but I don't think it's necessary to keep sharing Dylan Mulvaney. And I don't see him anymore, but that's only because I actively scroll away from that sort of thing, because I don't want to see it. And, but by everybody sharing it, it made it look like it was a lot more prevalent than it really, I think, is. And, um, and it took the focus away from things like sports or men and women's prisons. Like, I don't care how a man dresses. I don't care that at all. Um, and we kind of went from, we started shaming them for doing that. And that's like, but this is what we were saying the whole time. It's like, we don't care how you dress. We don't care we don't want you in our spaces. I get that. And that's the focus, should be there. But to humiliate somebody, or because they're having a private conversation, I just realized that maybe that isn't the best method that we could use. But I think it goes for more things than just, men who want to be women or whatever. It's all of the stuff that you see on social media. So, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, because I think we're all kind of in that moderate set at this point. Um, you don't want to see the extremes, but I don't want to see bad behavior shared on any social media, because it just proliferates.
I want to read another excerpt from your book, Ginger Snapped: Hot Flashes and Hot Takes, because it's a chapter that is a short chapter, but it cracked me up. Chapter 21: Paper Towels. When paper towel companies went to select a size, I resented it. You can't force me to use less paper towel. I actively searched for the old fashioned paper towels that were just one big square. And then something happened. I discovered that one third of the sheet was sometimes exactly what I needed. There's a lesson to be learned here.
Now, the funny part about that is, I don't know what kind of paper towels you buy, but I used to buy, what is it, Viva, I think, and they were the ones with the three sheets or whatever, but they were nice and absorbent. And then I had to buy Brawny because they didn't have the other one. And Brawny, in all of its wisdom, has taken the three sheets, but then it put a thing so that you can take one of those little sheets, and it's there, you can rip it in half. So they've got an extra partition for it. And I thought that was brilliant. And I've only discovered that like a couple weeks ago. So
I
I don't
love
know
it.
what the lesson is, but
Sometimes people will have to take for themselves what the lesson is. So but I just like these are the things I think people want to talk about, it because everything has become so like we have to when we meet someone new, we have to give them our social resume in advance and all this stuff, or we have to identify ourselves in one way or the other. Like, I think personally, I made a comment to Nat the other day. I think that we've gotten to the point now where AI, you can just create the content you want to see. People are going to get bored with it, and they're going to go back to actual paper magazines, right?
I
Or
agree.
right, it's like okay, eventually that's going to get boring to you, and then we're going to see it come full circle, and we'll start seeing the rise of the magazine again, right? Or newspaper or whatever. And I think it's the same thing with like things like that chapter, like, sometimes you just want to talk about things like what's up with the size of paper towels. And it's like now it'd be like, what are you saying about paper towels? Don't you know about paper towels? Paper towels is that, everything has to, because as a society across the Western world, we're tightly wound these days,
A
very
little,
much
yes.
so, right? So I just absolutely love that chapter, and I think that that's appealing to people and women, that we can just have something we can talk about that's not, doesn't have to be like you have to sit there and figure out calculus in your head. So I really enjoyed it. And
Well,
were you
and you
writing
don't
like
have
that
to
as a kid?
calculate,
Go
you
ahead,
don't
I'm
have to
sorry.
calculate all of the different people who might interpret it your choice. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think as women we tend to do that. Again, it's that people pleasing aspect of women where, especially in this situation, my go to, not my go to, but I would, and I think you're probably doing it too. You're sitting in your head as you're talking, thinking, okay, is this what I want to say, or should I say it this way? And, who's listening and all of that. And at some point, you just have to say, it doesn't matter what, and anybody can interpret things the way they want to. It's, like the paper towel. If I want the whole sheet, I can take the 3 sheets, right? Um, they don't have to tell me how to do it.
We should start an empowerment movement. 3 sheets for all.
Right.
So I was just
Then we can start on the mattress math.
there you go. There you go. Why do you put this ridiculous tag on the mattresses, and why is there a mattress police department somewhere? So were you this matter of fact though when you were a kid? Like, were you thinking things like this when you were young, and then that just, you just developed that and kept going with it? I feel like you probably did.
Yeah, I spent I'm I am a I like to be alone for the most part. That's why I like X so much, right? I can do it. I can be alone, but I'm with all you guys. Um, so I would spend, I get home from school and uh, I would read and I would imagine different things and just thoughts would pop into my head. And I got to give my brother credit. He was pretty funny too, and he would, ask questions about something. He was very easy to like jump off of like in conversations and stuff like that. So even now, we're in our 60s or almost, he's in his 60s, I'm not. But when we get together, especially around other friends, there's this, we act like 10-year-olds again. And because we just have that chemistry, I guess. But also this sort of weird, we grew up watching, Land of the Lost and the most bizarre shows, and they really got into our psyche. So everything kind of relates back to that. I don't know if it's just Gen X or what, but there's a high level of nostalgia that has always been there. Even in the 80s, we talk about the 70s like it was, way back in the olden days.
Uh, d- I just kind of wonder also, like, do you feel, for me, I'm getting better about it, but like, in general, I kind of stay, I know you don't stay away from technology, but what do you feel about, because you're talking about nostalgia, and you and your brother are watching these shows, because it was either watch those shows or go outside, but you had to do something together. And nowadays kids are just handed a phone or a tablet or whatever. um I, I wish that there was actually a way to, like, to keep kids, like, let's give everybody a phone that if they want to kid, if you're under 16, you only get a phone that if you want to spell the word cat, you got to press the number 1 3 times to get the C. That's my opinion. So how do you feel about, like, the access for kids for all the stuff that we didn't have when we were there, younger?
Uh, you know, I would love to go back to a landline and just get rid of my cell phone. Uh, and I would probably be upset about it once I did it, but because obviously there's a lot of really great things that you can do with a cell phone, but I wasn't attached to the landline as much. And because I had to share it with other family members as well, or my brother would pick up and listen to the conversations that I was having. So, but but we also, we spent most of our time outside, right? Especially in the summertime. I grew up on a block that had, I don't know, 40, 50 kids on it. So our families are a whole lot smaller and much more isolated. I don't know if we can go back, but I think that, like, so my kids are 10 years apart. My son had a phone. I think he was probably like a senior in high school. And then my daughter, who's 10 years younger, had it like 10 years earlier. So she was in probably fourth grade. Now both of them had dumb phones. They didn't have smartphones, but they graduated to them fairly quickly. Um, I think that was a mistake, but we didn't know, it was the Wild West. We had no idea what we were getting into. And I, to this day, I'm still surprised at what is on the internet that kids will find, right? To find out that all of this stuff was going on Minecraft and Roblox and anything that had a chat. Webkins had, trans stuff on it. So we didn't, and that's not even the dark web, or 4chan or any of those other horrible places. So we didn't know. Now we do. I don't know if we can put the genie back in the bottle. It'd be nice if we could, but knowing that the internet isn't probably going to change much, I guess I wouldn't give my kids a phone again until they were, I mean, I'd like to say 18, but I don't know that you could do that.
I'm one of the 5 people in the world that loves M. Night Shyamalan movies, all of them. And The Village, I think about The Village, the movie The Village, all the time. And I'm not trying to give anyone spoilers, but there's definitely one of the aha moments, and it is that they just got sick of society and went.
Right.
And I think about that all the time now. I'm like, see, y'all talk smack about M. Night, and look what he knew.
Oh, I love Signs is the one that I think about all the time. When the kid is on there, he pulls him out of the house and he's having the asthma attack, but he doesn't have the the thing. Um, and so he didn't get the poison put in him. And that was to what Mel Gibson was saying, that's why he had asthma. That's why. And so I love that because, these bad things that happen to us, sometimes there's a reason that we don't know right away. And it might take decades to find out, but there seems to be some sort of plan, or not. And we just view it that way. I don't know, but the answer is there. But yes, I love M. Night Shyamalan, especially, and the same with The Village. I think that was an excellent, like the twist was great.
Yes, absolutely. And I probably wouldn't have thought about that movie if we weren't living in today's times. Ever, it was a great one, but it wasn't my favorite of his. And it's so I just find it really interesting. And so let's talk a little bit about Minnesota. It
Okay.
is. It's a kind of you guys are going through some stuff up there in the form of the scandal regarding your taxpayer funds and everything. How are
Well, they're not
you?
just ours, they're yours too.
No, no, I know.
These are
Yes,
federal funds, yeah.
yes. But so, what is the general mood up there right now? With that, because I haven't had a chance really to speak to anyone who is in Minnesota since all that broke, and I just kind of wanted your opinion on how it's playing out within the state.
Um, I see more people talking about it on Twitter or X and Facebook than I do in the streets. But I was reading earlier this morning that Bloomington was, that's where a lot of ICE raids are happening. So these are suburbs of Minneapolis. They're by the airport or the Mall of America, which is not far from me. I haven't seen any though. I saw one, I think, but I didn't stop and take a video of it like these people doing. And you've got these kids. I say they're kids, they're probably not, but they're, 30s and younger would be my guess, who are out protesting ICE and the work that they're doing. And then, I live not far from a very liberal college that, you've got your protesters every Friday protesting, pro-Palestine. So they've got signs and these are professional signs and they're honking it's, and they've been doing this for years. I don't know what good it does, but I am probably in the minority. I was just on my next door thing. Somebody was talking about alerting people to ICE, so basically saying they're coming, what are we going to do to stop them? And, it's been a long day already. And my response was, why can't we just let them do their job? And of course I knew I would get piled on. I don't care. But that's what's going on. I'm probably going to have to move. This is what the people here want. They're okay with the fraud. Not all of them, but I think the that's the very loud voice is they're okay with that because they've justified it somehow, and it's not something that I can quite understand. So the realization has been over the last few weeks that I might have to move or just accept it. It's one or the other. I don't think it's going to change.
Well, I want to talk about what it's like to live in the Midwest a little bit, because the majority of my life was spent in the middle of the country, and then I moved out here to the coast about 20 years ago. I think that a lot of the time, and it frustrates me living here now, that I still think that a lot of the United States views the breadbasket of America as they call it the flyover zone, right? And I think that a lot of policies that have spread inward have come from the coastal cities, and I get frustrated a lot by the people assuming anyone who lives in the Midwest is either a farmer. Not that, hey, I would love to be a farmer. Don't get me wrong. Or it's everything's rural. And I think that's the coastal mentalities when it comes to anything once you leave the East Coast states or the West Coast states. Do you think that's a true statement, or do you find that's different for you?
um, I haven't really thought about it. I live in the Twin Cities, so it's very urban. Um, it's Chicago is a road trip away, and Chicago's pretty big city. Um, I've been to both coasts. Seattle isn't a whole lot different than the Twin Cities. You have a lot more. Um,
Is that recently or always has been not very?
it's we're now, I would say, the Twin Cities are a lot like Seattle was in the 90s, late 90s. I have been back there a couple times, so I'm not really sure what it's like there now. But, we never had panhandlers or, homeless. It was just too cold. And so now we do. They're everywhere. And it's sad. We've got, they call it the Fenty fold, where it's the people on the fentanyl who are just, they're folded over and just standing there. And I recall, when I took the ferry in Seattle, you'd go through the tunnel to get to the ferry, and it'd be just filled with usually like 20-year-olds or teenagers, kids strung out on drugs, and you just walked by them and you didn't pay any attention to them. Um, that's what it's like here now. Now it's just white noise, and it's so sad because it's cold, and you might be able to live that way all year round in Seattle. I don't know how they do it here, and we have people die, because they freeze to death, or they bring in. We get these tent cities now, and they'll have they'll have fires, and the whole encampment will burn down, or it's dangerous. I don't understand how people can think that that's any way for anybody to live. So it's perplexing to me that these very liberal cities that proclaim to want to look out for people are happy to let them just die on the streets. I don't understand that. But I would say that, the Twin Cities have become what Seattle was like in right around the 2000. I don't, and I assume it's worse. I was back there maybe 5 years ago and went to I used to work in downtown Seattle, and we were going to drive through there and go to the market. And it was scary. So it was like, no, let's just get out of here. And that's what we did. So we never even went in. So, but our downtowns are like that now too. It's kind of scary.
Yeah, I think that's across the board. We kind of have that issue. So let's talk about the book. What made you
Okay.
say that you wanted to, you know what, I want to take these ideas, make it a book, and publish it?
Oh, boy. It goes back to this book I had written before. It was called Minnesota Nice. And I have not published it for more legal reasons than anything else. Uh, I can't, I'm not allowed to talk about it, but at the time I wrote it, which was back in 2010, something like that. And it was, about telling about my growing up with my parents. My mom had anoxia. It's written in my book. So she was disabled, brain damaged. She had no short-term memory. She couldn't walk very well. She needed a lot of care. And then my dad came out as gay in, I think I was 10 or 11. So there was that, just a weird childhood, and it was in the backdrop of the 70s, right? So there was all this upheaval and all of that sort of thing. And my brother tended to be the one who kind of looked out for me, and he hung out with we grew up in a very Catholic neighborhood, so we were kind of adopted by these larger families just because we could just kind of fit in and nobody would notice us. So that kind of kept me on the straight and narrow to some degree, and probably a little bit more conservative than I might have been otherwise. And so it was always my plan to write about that. And then I did. And shortly after my father died. And, but the book was very angry. And I'm glad I did not publish it because it's not what I would want out there now. And so after my mother died, I had time to kind of come to grips with all of this. I did a lot of my mother's caretaking, even through my marriages, and it was probably, a good part of the reason my marriages didn't work out. So I had an awful lot of anger about all of that, and that's what prompted me to write. That's generally why I write, is because I'm pissed off, and but I didn't want that to go out there. I had some time, she died during COVID. And so there was a lot of time to kind of put everything into perspective. And so I started writing it again. And then what happened is in what I was working on, there were kind of four themes that were emerging. And Ginger Snapped was one of them. And it was the easiest one to publish at the time. And because I was self-publishing, I needed to learn how to do the mechanics of that. So I decided to put that one first. And so I got the other ones that are kind of in the hopper, ready to go. I'm just editing now. But so it was always my plan to write. It was what I was going to write and the tone I was going to take, and all of that has shifted considerably since I started it. So I've always thought of writing as being therapeutic, and it is. But there's also, and a lot of this perspective is probably because of social media. Is, for me, you don't have to put every thought out for everybody to see, right? Some things should just remain private, and so that's kind of, I should back up a little bit. And I mentioned this in Ginger Snapped, is that, when we first started social media, everybody was putting every story out there. And you could see it, that it kind of changed the way everybody worked, right? Suddenly everybody had mental illnesses. Do you remember that? Like everybody was depressed, or everybody was ADHD. And it was mostly women who were talking about these things. And I'm not saying that these things didn't happen, but I think a lot of people really leaned into their mental illness as kind of a badge. And I wouldn't even say they were mental illness, but the label of it. So that didn't seem healthy to me. It seemed that, maybe we should not focus on all these negative things and lean into them. Maybe we should try and move away from that. Because, similar to what I was saying earlier, the more you put out that one thing, the more you think about something, the more it's going to become the thing. So I wanted to get away from that. And so the tone of Ginger Snap was very different than what I had previously written. But it's nothing that I wouldn't want out there. I will say this though, I did, because of the time that we're living in, I still sugarcoated it a lot. And that's only because I've lost friends to all of these having different political beliefs, and that still sits with me. I don't want to lose friends. I don't want to lose, people because I have an opinion that is apparently a little harsher than they would like. So I did tone it down a little bit. I don't regret that, because a lot of people don't want to hear the harsh truth, but I'm probably leaning away from that as I go forward, only because I think the tide has changed also.
I think that you should do that. Never ignore my instinct anymore. And if that's what your instinct is saying, then that's the right choice. How was the self-publishing process for you?
There's a learning curve to it for sure. I think the formatting for me was the most challenging part. Just in that I had never done it before. And so the writing is much easier than the mechanics of it. Page count and all that. So that was a big thing for me too, because Ginger Snap is a really short book. You can read it in an afternoon if you want. I say it's a great bathroom reader, because it doesn't build on itself. Like, you don't need to read one chapter to know what's going to happen in the next. Which is how I write. I like the idea of just these, pickup stories. But oh God, I lost the train of where I was going. Let's see. Nope, it's gone.
You were talking about how the formatting was the hard part, and you didn't have to read one chapter. You didn't have to read it all the way through, and you could read a chapter here or there.
I'm sorry, my dog was making that weird noise.
Oh, I get the dog distraction. You were preaching
Yeah.
to the choir.
Yeah, I don't know. That wasn't the original question though, was it?
Yeah, no, I was just like how the process was for you.
Oh, the process. Yeah, my thought was it needed to be longer. That was my big worry, was that, oh God, it's so short. And then it dawned on me, it's like, you know what? People don't have great attention spans anymore. They're used to reading 140 characters. And this is all I have to say. I don't want to add more filler to it. So but that was a hard lesson to kind of integrate, or really believe, because you go to a bookstore and the books are 300 pages and it's like, that's just, I don't have that much to say about anything. But I'm also, I don't do creative. I'm not writing a story. I'm only telling my stories, which is a very different thing than, you know, J.K. Rowling. I'm not even comparing myself to her, but I see her on Twitter right now. She's crafting a story. It's got a beginning and an end and a middle, and there's an adventure and all of that. My stories don't have that. Or if they do, as you were saying before, they are my stories. So I'm not making them up. I can just tell them. And there's a big freedom in that compared to somebody who is crafting a story. And I am in awe of those people. I don't have that talent. I wish I did. Maybe not.
Yeah, see, mine's doing it in the background now. The barking. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the whole thing. It's like there's so many different ways to be creative. Like it's an unlimited pool. I'm not good with zeros and ones, but there are other people, women in this movement that love tech and love all that stuff. Looking at you, Nat. But we all have our strengths, right? And we all have I think what's awesome about the community on X is, for the most part, women are like, when they come out, and because I think for all of us to share any of our creativity on here can kind of be like, none of us want to get told we're, that have people being rude about our creativity. So it's like, do I even want to put it up? And then we put anything we're working on it, and it's just like, I I can't get over how many, wow, this is great, or look at what so and so did, or and I think that that's part of our strength as women, is that if enough of us see through the bullshit that society tells us that we have to just be jealous of each other or petty or spiteful, versus celebrating when when the women in our community, whether it's your small community or your large community, I think the more women that are saying it's okay to just be happy and proud for someone versus being snarky and jealous, I think the more of that we have, the better.
I agree. Yeah. But I also think it, is as long as it's authentic. Because that's kind of where we went down that road was, oh, can't you just be nice? And look, that didn't get us in a good place. So, whenever I comment on somebody's work or, artwork or anything online, I only do it because I mean it. And it's never, if it's not something I that that resonates with me, I don't criticize it, because that's not like, it's going to resonate with somebody else. It just doesn't happen to resonate with me. There's no point in pointing that out. Um, but at the same time, I'm not going to say, it's like, when somebody says, do these pants make me look fat? Well, I'm not going to say, yes, they look fat, but I would say something like, well, maybe you could find something better to look or better to wear. You know what I mean? So I think there's there's a way to do it without just going along and being kind. I that movement really kind of, it changed me in many ways. I'm not going to just be kind anymore. I'm going to be authentic and real, and I'll tell you the truth if you ask me. But I'm not going to, um, throw accolades on someone who doesn't deserve it. That's how we end up with Jeffrey Marsh.
Does this avatar make me look fat, Jennifer?
Absolutely.
Well, no, I think that's the point. It's like, I see stuff all the time. That isn't, that I think is someone's cup of tea, as you say. That doesn't mean, like, I try and promote those that I do see, but I don't think it's necessary whenever we have women that have been successful in whatever their field is. And I'm talking about whether you call yourself a turf or not. If you're in this, all women are in this movement, because if our sex class falls, that we have to ourselves, then everything is off. It doesn't matter anymore. I think it's okay to, you don't have to automatically go, well, why didn't I get that accolade or whatever. That's, find your lane. You shouldn't care what anyone else thinks about what you're doing, your art, your whatever, your business or anything like that. If, like, I think we've long gone past, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, to where, and I think there's more and more of us in this movement who see, um like, for me, I don't want to be a face of this movement. I don't want a large account, because I am working on other things now, and I'm focusing on my art. There's people who are okay being front facing in this, or speaking out, or going to things, and I go for it, right? I just think that more and more of us need to go, okay, just because we don't all have the same values, we don't, because none of us walk the same path. None of us. And I'm not going to tell a woman who's had a different life than me that she has to have the same values of me or beliefs. I would find it completely boring if the only women around me agreed with me on every issue. I probably would have walked away. That would not hold my attention. I like how that every one of us is different. We are snowflakes. Every one of us is different. And, oh, I just remember that they use snowflake as cut down. Dang it. I'm not hip enough to remember this stuff. We're all individuals. We're all like grains of sand. There we go. Each one you have to get down to see how beautiful, because sand is beautiful if you look at it under a microscope, right? If you
Mhm.
take the time to just to see the woman in front of you versus this big picture, oh, she's on this show or she's not on that show, whatever, that doesn't matter. We should just be supporting that a woman is getting her voice heard, and she's either getting her voice heard because of her business, or she's because of the movement, or because of her art, or whatever. We have enough men out there and some women who think that we aren't equal to everyone else that are cutting us down. We don't need to add to it. That's just me. Sorry, I'm not supposed to be preaching about all that, but I just think, and I see that, like, you started a community on here, right? And your whole purpose of it, and I is to get women to come together, right? And sometimes that can be a little frustrating because you can see it in your head and you're hoping people will and you just have to keep trying to get women to come together and go, you know what, kudos to you for doing this, or I think you're awesome, or what about this idea? And I see that about you, even though that sometimes you are, as you say, you just get to the point, you don't have time, you're not sugarcoating things. That doesn't change that I can see your heart, and that you're not out there actively looking to do anything but just be yourself, and and have good conversations with people. That's how I see you on X.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think of myself as, I mean, I realize that, we've certainly met because of the, turf movement, so to speak, but I don't, I don't consider myself
That's
in
not
a
what we talk
movement.
about, right? We may
Pardon
have
me?
met that way. I said we may have met that way,
Right,
but that's not what our
right.
conversations behind the scenes are
And
about.
that's my point, is that I don't like really, I don't think about movements per se. I Because they don't all, like, I know so many different people and they have so many different aspects of what is important to them. Like, they tend to be aligned, I think, to some degree, but for the most part, I want to hang out with people who are, respectful and have character. This whole, especially this Minnesota stuff, like COVID, being lied to by the people in charge really did a number on, I think, all of us, right? I don't trust anybody anymore. And because of being lied to, and that's the same thing with, the transgender movement. It's based on a lie. And when you can't speak the truth, that like, where do you go from there? And so most of the people that I do hang out with in real life or online tend to be people who honor the truth. And to me, that's really all that is necessary. We don't have to agree on because that's based on my experience or your experience, which are going to be very different. So you might have a belief about something, or you might hold a position very dear to you that I hadn't even considered because it wasn't part of my experience growing up, or even the last 10 years or whatever. Um, and you can't even be like, I can't even begin to encompass all of the different things that we should care about. Like, I can pick a few, and those are the ones that I focus on because that has meaning to me. But you're going to have something that's very different that is meaningful to you. So yes, I agree with you completely. I just uh sorry, I got the dog nose in my face. That is, it's, for me, it's authenticity. And I hate that word too, it's overused, but it's, having some character and standing up for what's right, whatever you think that is. So even like these kids out protesting ICE and trying to, they're throwing themselves in front of the cars, which I think is stupid, but they believe it. I think they're misguided, but at least they're standing up for what they believe. So I've got some respect for that, even though I disagree with them.
What is one thing about you, Redhead Ranting? What do you do to relax, Jennifer Brown?
Oh,
Once you leave the Redhead Ranting at the
I'm on
tap
X.
dealer.
That's what I do. it's going to Twitter and
So
just chilling out.
that's your decompression.
Isn't that sad? Yeah.
No, not
Especially
if
in the
you're looking at
wintertime.
baby animals and stuff and nature. I mean,
And that's what I end up looking at. My timeline has changed a lot. It's a lot more otters and cats, and unfortunately AI is creeping into that. But yeah, it's still online, which I wish it weren't. But it's winter here, so um, hey, sorry, she's chewing on the doorknob.
hey,
Um,
trust me, I'm in the background begging my female Scotty to behave for just a
yeah.
little longer. So
Um,
I wanted to ask you, what is one misconception that you think is of you? What is one thing you would want our listeners and anyone who follows you? What is something about you that you would like the world to know that they may not get from just your online personality and also your books?
I mean, if I wanted them to know it, they'd know it,
Ooh,
right?
good answer.
I mean, I am who I am pretty much. I might be a little bit more bombastic online than I would be in person. But maybe not bombastic, but I'm probably a little bit more over the top. Not over the top either, but in person it would probably be less, not quite as mouthy. Maybe not. I don't know. I'm pretty much the same.
Well, no, I mean, because I expected as much since authenticity is very, very important to you. I'm going
Well,
to
I
read.
also
Go
assume that
ahead.
everybody online is themselves, right? I assume that anything that you say on your page is that's who you are. Um, so, unless I'm talking to a bot or something, most of the people, especially that I'm looking at here who's listening, these are people that I assume are who they are, right? Like, I don't think most of us are putting on any sort of um, caricature.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We're going to read one more from your book, if you don't mind. Another one of my
No, that's
favorites. Chapter 18, Cup Holders. Can we talk about hydration for a minute? Are we as a country so dehydrated that grown ass adults need to carry bottles with us everywhere we go? I'm not talking about when you're out for a run or a hike in the desert. That seems really smart. I'm talking about when you're out shopping in the mall where there are not only restaurants but also drinking fountains in all corners and on every level of the mall. And yes, even I fall for it to some degree. I can't drive anywhere without a Diet Coke in one of the 15 cup holders that I have in my car. When I was growing up and learning how to drive, there were no cup holders. I had to straddle that can of tab between my legs while holding a cigarette in my other hand as I shifted gears and worked the clutch. Thank God I didn't have a cell phone then. Y'all don't know how good you have it. Some of us have never hydrated while pushing a stroller or a shopping cart at Target. So let's talk about that one a little bit. What brought up cup holders to you?
For me, it was walking. So one of my other books is called Confessions of a Mall Walker, because I walked the Mall of America during the winter months. And to see everybody with these giant jugs of water that they carry with them is like mind blowing to me. Like, I get it if you're at a sporting event or something, but do you need to carry 36 ounces of water in a metal? I mean, that's got to be heavy, right? Um, it just it just seemed odd to me. I don't recall, like, we had the water fountain in school that sometimes you took a couple sips from. I don't recall ever being hydrated. Like, we must have been so dehydrated growing up. It blows my mind.
I think that's
Um,
a t-shirt idea. I don't recall being hydrated in the 70s.
no, I mean, yeah, there's the whole trope that we drank out of the hose, and we probably did, but um, even at school, like, I don't recall, you got that little carton of milk and that was your hydration for the day. So, oh no, you did get snacks. So then you get another carton of milk. So 2 cartons of milk a day. And then plus whatever you had when you got home. And then, probably a glass of orange juice before you went to school. But now kids are, 36 ounces has to be done by 9 a.m. So, and that's just more time in the bathroom.
Personally, I feel we need to TP and egg the person's house who came up with putting soda machines in schools.
Yeah, I didn't have that until I went to high school they had vending machines. Um, yeah, that was a mistake,
Yes,
probably.
let's give
I don't know.
kids more sugar when they're having a hard time concentrating as it is.
I mean, we would go to the vending machines and get a tab and a bag of Munchos and a Snickers, and that would be lunch. But that was also usually after, going out to the alley and getting high. So um, I don't recommend that, but it was fun.
I can top you. When I was in high school, I had moved to the South to live with my dad, and the girls would be standing there putting on their lipstick, and they'd have a lip full of dip. So I was like, and then they get dip. If anyone doesn't know what that is, it's chewing tobacco. I'd never seen women with chewing tobacco in their mouths before I moved to the South, but
I didn't know what that was. We would smoke in the alley also. I mean, like cigarettes, and in the bathroom back when you could do that. But we also had a smoking section in my senior year. There was a smoking section, actually my junior and senior year, where you could smoke,
you could still smoke in
like legally.
restaurants back then too, I
Yeah,
think.
you could, and on the airplane.
Oh Lord, yes. And there was a movie that came out, I'm pretty sure in the 80s, and I want to say it was Cheryl Teague's, might have been the early 90s, where she was a time traveler and the way they kept healthy but was by chain smoking. Still haven't figured out. I'll figure, and I think it was with Chris Christopherson. I'm showing my age here, but I'll figure out that movie because I've always been fascinated how they're saying the only way we could stay alive as a species is by chain smoking, like my great aunt used to,
I
where
mean,
it's
we
like,
were told that it kept the weight off, and it did. Like
mm-hmm.
instead of eating or snacking, you'd smoke. Um,
Yeah, that brings me to the next thing I want to ask you because I think young girls today are going through a much different set of social pressures than, and like every generation had it. Like, I think except for the 80s, I think that was the one brief moment where everyone just wore as many neon colors as they wanted. They felt okay carrying a giant gold lame purse the size of a pillow, right? Like, you could just do whatever. But and then the 90s rolled around and we had heroin chic, right? With Kate Moss, and the supermodels started getting thinner because at first you had George Michael's video that came out, and you had all the supermodels in it, right? And everyone looked healthy. You didn't have Naomi Campbell, didn't you couldn't see through her because she was transparent. But not long after that came the rise of the models like Kate Moss and the heroin chic, and the 90s were brutal unless you were rail thin if you were a female in the US.
I mean, it was that way in the 80s as well. I mean, I had a raging uh, eating disorder, and most of my friends did. And we all learned about him from Mademoiselle magazine and 17 because they started writing about anorexia and bulimia, and it spread through like, wanting to be trans. And I mean, it was a contagion. And the difference is that the doctors realized what was happening because we were reading about these things in magazines. And so they compelled the magazines to stop writing about it. And they did. And a lot of it went away. The contagion part of it, obviously anorexia is a disease that is very difficult, and it didn't just go away for a lot of people, but for the ones who were trying to become anorexic because it was cool, or because the social pressure to be thin was there. When they stopped talking about it, a lot of people just got better.
Yeah, was it
But
the 80s when Karen Carpenter passed away?
it was I mean, I don't know if she died in the 80s or in the 90s, but yeah.
Yeah,
But
and
there
it's like
was
it was this open secret, right? You could see her in interviews and stuff, right? And then she was just gone. I think she addressed it like towards the end, but I think I feel like that played a large part in with maybe not the magazines and stuff, but the doctors maybe will have pulled back. And I think that's the big difference now. We're not, even when it comes to kids, we're not seeing the doctors going, oh, this is bad. Right. And I think in girls now, I think it's coming back around because now you have the weight loss drugs, and you have women who are on in films and television that one day they look just like a healthy woman. They're not even, in my book, overweight in any shape or form. Another real thing. You've got like Amy Schumer, Ariana Grande, the other chick from Wicked. And it's just, I feel like it's trending it, but because like we had the Kardashians come in right in the early 2000s, and that was to me when things started changing, where you could be voluptuous. Not that I have ever watched their shows, but you could, you started seeing it more, and then nowadays you have one side of it. They're saying take Ozempic, be real thin, and then you have the other side where you have people who are dangerously overweight who are calling it body positivity.
Yeah, well, Ozempic killed body positivity, right? I mean, that's over. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it ended very quickly. Yes, I mean, I
Well,
think
it'll be interesting if it comes back.
it'd be nice if we just had like, well, the body positivity that we had, I think went way over, like it was, women, or not women, it was people, but mostly women who were, 400 or 500 pounds. That's not body positivity. That's no, to me, that was no different than looking at Karen Carpenter and saying, oh, that's healthy. You know what I mean? So I think we can have body positivity where, healthy is healthy. And I think there's a fairly large spectrum between whatever.
Agree.
There's a commercial for, I don't know if it's Ozempic or if it's, because now a lot of like Weight Watchers and all these other diet programs, um, they now offer the Ozempics, right? So you can get them through these programs. And they're, it's marketing, right? Or it's not marketing, it's capitalism. They want to keep up and make the money. But I think that they're in one of these ads, this woman is saying, oh, I was a size 10 and now I'm a size 2. That's scary to me. That's a red flag because, I think a size 10 is pretty average, especially as you get older. So I don't know. I have little faith in the doctors. They used to be the gatekeepers. Um, and I don't know that they are anymore. And I have a lot to say about this, but that's also another book that is I'm working on. That was the main crux, is I have struggled with my weight my entire life. And I've been a size 2, I've been a size, 16, and I'm not particularly tall. So I mean, I've probably gained and lost 100 pounds 3, 4 times in my life. And part of that is pregnancy. But the point is that it wasn't usually done just because I felt like being healthy. It was because I felt like society needed me to be that way. So, but doctors were around to be, especially 20, 30 years ago, helpful. Now they're not. Now you can walk into any doctor and they'll prescribe you, Ozempic or whatever the other ones are. And I don't have any problem with that. I think, for many people, that's a tool that can be used wisely and used well. I think it's prescribing it to teenagers that's a problem, or to somebody like Ariana Grande. And I don't know that she actually has it, but I assume she does. That, there doesn't seem to be any gatekeeping anymore. And that is scary to me. But the gatekeeping has been gone for a long time, in all medical things,
I think
it
these
seems.
both rose around the same time, and this is just my opinion. The TLC channel came out with I Am Jazz, My 600-Pound Life. All these
Mm-hmm.
shows, they also had shows about people who like to eat mattress foam. Like, I think they all kind of, and then it caught on, right? And then they're like, oh, well, let's run with all of these stuff. But I think you're absolutely right. I think because you can get I heard a commercial on the radio. I don't often listen to the radio. I just play my playlist. And I heard a commercial for one of these that was like a discount one, right? And all you have to do is do a phone interview. And I think it's dangerous that they are just giving it to anyone basically who wants it, right? And it hasn't, I know it, like, because my dad's on it because he has type 2 diabetes. But my dad, like, I've never seen my dad act like a weirdo about medicines. My dad isn't a drinker. He quit smoking years ago. But anytime I bring up, that, I don't think he needs to be on this anymore because he's at a healthy weight and all this stuff. Oh no, I can't come off of it, right? And I actually have a cousin who's on Wegovy who now the doctors are telling her that, oh well, she can't come off of it because she's lost so much weight. But that's beside the point. I just think that, like, it's different. Back then we had the opportunity, if our parents found out from the doctor that we were doing this, whatever, they would take away those magazines if we told them where we learned this stuff. Now kids are just 24/7 exposed to it. Well, we've got about 18 minutes left, so I want to go back to, let's talk about I know you can't tell us a lot of details, but what are you working on? Do you have multiple projects, just the one that you're redoing? What are you working on these days?
I've got my bad dates is about, I might have it out by next week. That's the upside of self-publishing is that, there's no schedule. It's just my schedule. So I was hoping to have it done before this, but it's taken me a little bit longer. But I will have that out before the end of the year. And then next year I've got at least two that I have, again, these are all projects that I've been working on over the years. One of them is basically the original book about growing up in the 70s, with my mom and my dad, just different tone. And then I've been tossing around a book about my grandparents, which was they lived in Ohio, and we would go and visit them every spring vacation, and it was quite the magical time, and I didn't really realize how wonderful it was until I reached adulthood. I mean, it was always fun, but what they did, and the difference between generations of, and I'm sorry for my dog, but we're seeing that these days there's a generation, they're not getting married, they're not having kids, and that's going back to that loneliness epidemic that's coming up. You're going to have a generation of people that don't have grandkids, and then followed by that generation of kids that don't have kids of their own. And I'm a little afraid how that's going to play out as everybody ages, because there is something absolutely magical about having that relationship with your grandparents. And they just my grandparents, they were not particularly uh they lived far enough away that we would go with them for a week, and that was more than enough for them. My brother and I fought a lot as kids, and they didn't particularly like that. So they kept us busy. They always made sure we had things to do. We saw all kinds of fun. We saw the Harlem Globetrotters and things like that with them. But they could do it in a week, whereas my grandparents back here never did any of that stuff because I saw them all the time. So there was something about that, the fact that they live far away, that was really quite magical. And so that's more of a book that I'm working. I mean, it's not going to be like Ginger Snap with these short little chapters. That one will be more linear and with a beginning and a middle and an end type of thing. But that's what I'll be working on.
Do you want to give us a little hint about what we can expect from the book you're about to publish?
The Bad Dates. If you follow me on X, you will see me talk about the bad dates I've been on. It's basically a roundup of that. And just kind of, it's similar to Ginger Snapped, and there's a lot of advice in it. I am on the dating apps, as you all probably know, and they're horrid, absolutely awful, especially as you get older. And I realize that I am the common denominator in all of this. So I get that, but I had, recently a guy texted me. One of the things that just drives me crazy is they will jump into this relationship before you've even met them. So they will start sending you these good morning and good evening, good night text messages, when that level of intimacy has not been actually cultivated. Like you haven't even been on a date yet, and they're doing this because that's, I don't know why. But I start getting these 6 a.m. text messages, and I like, that's not like, don't text me at 6 o'clock in the morning. I need coffee first. I'm not even up at 6. And yet these guys are wanting to have that, I don't know what it is, intimate, you know, hopefully they're only sending it to one, maybe they're sending it to 10 other women. I don't know. But those are so it's a lot of that. Like, what are they doing wrong? What are we doing wrong? Unfortunately, I only have my perspective of being on the dating apps. Lilith, sorry. Um, and so I only see one side of things, right? And as there's just there's a lot of funny in the whole thing. It's also a lot of frustrating.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I absolutely loved Ginger Snapped. It was fun. It's one of those books that will engage someone like me. I have very little eyes left after either working on stuff for Redhead or doing art. So I listen sometimes, but it's not, I don't read. It's just like there's, by that point, I can't, because I have multiple prisms in my glasses at this point. So I don't have the best eyesight anymore as it is. And for me, this is the kind of book that's going to engage me because I like how the chapters are shorter and that I can read one and then walk away and come back in a few days and read a different one, and I didn't have to remember,
Right.
but I do remember because they're funny, and I'm like, I get why she thought this, right? And that's what I like about them because I can relate. I can relate to them in that form. So Bad Dates comes out. You're working on the book about your childhood. Any other projects?
No, I keep thinking I need to, do more on Instagram and what's the other one?
TikTok.
TikTok. Yeah. And I have those accounts. I don't do much with them. I don't know. Video is not my strong suit. I love this sort of format right here. But I can't, I do have a podcast that I do whenever I feel like it, which is like twice last week, 0 times this week. I would love to get more consistent with that because I really like those formats, but I don't want to do politics. I don't want to do current events. So it's having enough content to go into it. And I really need a sidekick. I was talking about that last week, or I can't just talk on my own. So um, that's kind of what I'm hoping to accomplish in 2026 is to get that kind of figured out.
So it sounds like you already have a full plate for the new year of things that you want to do. And the one thing that I take away from seeing you on here and reading your blogs and communicating with you is um, whatever happens, you're not going to let someone else dictate what you do or what your limitations are. You're just going to do what you're going to do. And I think that the more women we can have talking about that it's like you just have to believe in yourself because we're the worst about, in my opinion, about talking ourselves out of most of the things that we think we want to try, right? We should never talk ourselves out of our dreams.
Well, I
Never.
talk myself out of things all the time, right? I think we all do that. But I had a friend of mine, this was years and years ago. She commented on how I do things. And she's like, you just keep like you fail and then you get up and you do it again, which is what I do. Um, and she's like, I don't understand that. Like once I've failed at something, I'm not going to do it anymore. And that to me was such an odd kind of position in life. But I have I've come from a place where failure was fairly early in life, and it's like it didn't make any sense not to keep trying. So I think that's one of my strengths, is that I don't let the failure get me down too much, but I do talk myself out of things. I think we all do that. I try not to, but you know, I'll eventually do it, but I'll go kicking and screaming. And I do that with writing every day. It's like, okay, I've got to do, 2 hours of this. And, by the end of the day has come and I haven't done it because I just didn't feel like it. And I'll do it, but it's usually not. And once I get into it, I'm fine. But it's one of those things where you kind of set yourself up for your own, not failure, but your own, uh, you get in your own way. And I do that a lot.
Yeah.
I get in my own way all the time.
I understand that language fluently. Well, Jennifer, thank you for joining us today.
Thank
We
you for
have
having
added a,
me.
yeah, absolutely. And Jennifer's blogs, she's graciously allowed us at the Red Tent to start reposting some of her blogs from her site. And this will be up on the Scarlet Frequency across all podcast formats, along with our other storyteller spaces. Please support Jennifer and all female creatives out there. This book is worth it. It's a great gift to give a woman that you know that appreciates humor. It's just I really enjoyed this. And please let us know what's going on. And Jennifer will be featured on the Red Tent Quill, and we will get the blog up of this. And I just wanted to say again, you took the time to come in here and speak to us. What would be one piece of advice that you could give people in general when it comes to the process of deciding to go for it in the form of self-publishing?
Oh, I think self-publishing is awesome, especially as somebody coming from more the right side of the aisle, because I knew early on I was not going to get published by any traditional publishers. I hope that changes, because my book isn't getting out there because I don't have the marketing behind me, that a big time publisher would have. It's not as polished because I don't have that infrastructure behind me. But I can put out as many books a year as I want. I can write about whatever I want. So there's a lot of really great, like, if you feel like writing, or any sort of, like, if you can have art, you can put it on Amazon. The self-publishing format is so, I think it opens up avenues for people that did not exist 20 years ago. And I think that's, for creatives, that's a great thing. And you don't have to adhere to, like, the traditional publishing houses, which is still very, very woke. So I think it's, if you feel like doing that, by all means, give it a shot. And it's not that hard. It just, there is a learning curve to it. If you haven't done it before, it's like learning anything new. But once you learn it, you've learned it. So I think the world of self-publishing, I think it has opened up all kinds of avenues for people that might not have ever been heard before. And the same with music, is the same way. You can download music now that wouldn't have gotten out there 10, 15 years ago. So I think that's one of the great things about the internet.
Absolutely agree. Reminder, and please pass this on, those who are listening. If you're going to purchase a book from one of the women who's been on Storyteller or women on XUC, whoever you're supporting, make sure you leave a review. If
Yes.
we can get, if a book can get the 50 reviews, then they're going to move up the list. So we are working on something to remind people to leave a review. But yes, please leave a review. And if you gift someone a book, like if you give them this ginger snap for Christmas, put a little piece of paper inside the book that says, please make sure you go and leave a review of the book, because that's how we get women seen, right?
Yeah, that's a great reminder, and something I hadn't thought of. Reviews are massive. Even though I actually talk about reviews in the book, not about book reviews, but about, going to the doctor and being texted about reviewing.
Yes,
That's a little
absolutely.
irritating.
Anytime, and that's I'm going to give you a homework assignment. If you're giving anyone your book, make sure you ask them to go please leave a review, because that's how we get women creatives noticed on the big platforms. We have to show that people are buying it and they're reviewing it. So always your goal, women out there, if you're getting a book, remind yourself to go to the website and leave a review wherever you purchased it from. Okay, we're going to go ahead and wrap up now. Thank you again, Jennifer. I know that it's getting close to the holidays, and we appreciate you taking the time to come have a conversation with me. We will be back after the first of the year with Nina Rose Hyatt. She's also known as the girl who ran away. And she wrote about her life changing moment in her childhood in Karachi when she was able to get out of there. So once again, we will have this space up on the Scarlet Frequency, so you can listen to it anytime. Please go subscribe to the Scarlet Frequency on YouTube or wherever you're listening to podcasts, so that we can continue to trend, because we are. And if we're trending, then the women who we're talking to are trending as well. So please, and also pass on this space so that everyone can hear our amazing conversation with Jennifer. Once again, thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And please keep us updated on when the publication for your Bad Dates book hits. And
I will.
we will make sure to get that information out to your followers and ours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great holiday.
You as well. And everyone in here, have a great rest of your year. And we will see you. The Red Tent is going on a hiatus we'll still be putting out our Turf Miss, 12 days of Turf Miss, but we are going on a hiatus till the beginning of the year. But please give us a follow, give Jennifer a follow. And yeah, it's been an amazing season of Storyteller, and we have a lot more in store. So please keep an eye out. Thank you again.